I hear some people talking about the importance of kind of setting the microbiome in the early parts of someone's life. And then you hear other parts of the conversation where people talk about being able to rapidly change and alter the microbiome. So if someone's kind of confused by that, because they could seem at a high level as contradictory statements. One is, in the first 3 years of life, you're given your microbiome, and that's kind of it for you to sort of play around with and navigate the world. And then the other is, no, you can do things with your lifestyle that will really change it. So yeah, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the early life microbiome period is, and there's a lot of data on this, is like very dynamic. I mean, you'll see huge shifts in a baby's microbiome as they have different exposures. Exposures that as an adult, if you saw the same exposures, would be like a blip, wouldn't really do much. But because the gut is, when a baby's born, their immune system of the gut is really, naive. Everything, your gut's the largest immune organ, endocrine organ, all that's naive though. And one of the reasons we have a microbiome is to educate that immune system and the physiology of the gut. And so there's a lot of, getting to know each other in the early days that determine, what your microbiome imprint is going to be long term. And I'd say, it's more dynamic than the first 3 years. The first 3 years is a very dynamic period, but it'll shift a lot probably through puberty, so about 13, 14. And then after that point, if we looked at a curve, right, it would be like this up until like puberty, and then it would look kind of like a pretty smooth curve. But if you zoomed in to a 1 week period, you would see perturbations, right? And that could be because you were stressed or you traveled or you changed your diet or whatever. But on the whole, it's pretty constant. And there's a lot of data showing, yes, within 24 hours, your microbiome, you can rapidly change it, but it often rebounds and goes back. As a baby, it can shift and not go back. So you can really push the system as a baby. And I actually think that's one of the most interesting areas of microbiome research right now is the early life period, because there is, I think, an opportunity to colonize the gut in ways that will be favorable later in life. We just don't know all of that yet.
So when you say, I guess, perturbations, what are we talking about? Are we talking about in the first few years of life, that's where the sort of specific types of bacteria species that you're going to have, they're there for your entire life, but you can kind of modulate the balance of those to a degree later in life? Or is there the opportunity later in life to actually introduce new species?
Yeah, it's more, it's a good question. There's a lot of factors in that first 3-year period that will determine some of your keystone species that you carry through life. And it can be things like breastfeeding versus bottle. And it can be the type of food you're weaned onto. Where in the world do you live? What foods are you eating in that first period? That can introduce microbes that are ones that we'll see as adults still. But you're not totally stuck with that. There are, people who take antibiotics, right? They get repopulated, but they often will get repopulated with the same types of bugs again. I think when we think about as an adult, like probiotics and things like that, can we expect an externally introduced set of organisms to take root in an adult gut? It's actually quite unlikely, because a lot of those niches are filled unless we're missing something and we know we're missing it. As a baby or as a toddler or a child, there's still a lot of available, niches in the gut to be occupied. But as you get older, they get filled in, and, it's kind of a survival of the fittest, and that's what you got. So it's much harder to perturb that system. But if you have you're on a medication, or it's an antibiotic, and you've eliminated something, actually eliminated it, and you sequence your microbiome and you know it's gone, well, then now that niche is available and you can repopulate. Okay. But you got to know that it's missing, right? Just taking a random probiotic may not do anything, because there's no place for those to live.